If you're part of Gen X, you're probably living in one of the most demanding financial seasons of life. You're working hard to keep your career on track. You may still be raising kids or even supporting adult children. And at the same time, you're stepping in to care for your aging parents. And while you're doing all of that, you're also trying to save and preserve your own retirement future. And if you feel like you're stretched too thin, you're not imagining it. You really are carrying 3 generations of responsibility all at once. Let me share a story where I have seen this firsthand. A client I worked with, we'll call her Lisa, found herself pulled in every direction. Her mom had just been diagnosed with early stage dementia and suddenly needed extra medical care. At the same time, her son had been accepted into college with tuition bills on the horizon, while her daughter was still in high school with all the expenses that come with activities, sports, and preparing for the next step. And in the middle of that, Lisa was trying to make up for lost time with her retirement savings. Like many Gen Xers, she fell behind and was determined to get caught up. One evening, she called me and said, "It feels like everyone is dependent on me, but no one is asking how I'm going to make this all work." If you've ever had that moment where the weight of all those responsibilities hit you at once, you know exactly how she felt. And I know many of you watching this feel the same way right now. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to stay that way. There are practical, straightforward steps you can take to create some breathing room, relieve stress, and keep your retirement on track, even while you're caring for your kids and your parents. So let's start with the very first step, the foundation that helped Lisa move from overwhelmed to organized: building a multi-generational budget. The very first step toward getting control of everything is to create what I call a multi-generational budget. Most of us are used to looking at our household expenses in isolation: mortgage, groceries, utilities, maybe savings. But in this stage of life, that's not the full picture anymore. You've got your own expenses. On top of that, you may have medical costs for your parents, support for adult children, and educational costs if you still have kids in school. If you don't see all those pieces in one place, it's almost impossible to make smart choices about what you can realistically cover and where you may need to draw boundaries. That was exactly the case for Lisa. She had her retirement contributions drafted automatically, her son's tuition payments showing up in another account, and then she was swiping her credit card whenever her mom's prescriptions or home care costs came in. On paper, she thought she was doing fine, but when we pulled all of those expenses together, the picture changed. For the first time, she could see the total cost of carrying 3 generations at once. And that was powerful, because once she saw the full number, she could start asking, what are the things I truly need to take responsibility for? And what are the things that I may need to step back from or ask for help with? That's the real benefit of this exercise. A multi-generational budget isn't just about numbers, it's about clarity. It allows you to prioritize instead of guessing. It gives you permission to say, yes, I can handle this, or no, that's not sustainable. Here's how you can do it for yourself. List every category of expense: your household bills, retirement contributions, and debt payments. Then add in your parents' medical costs, prescriptions, or long-term care needs. And then don't forget about your children's expenses, whether that's tuition, after-school programs, or even support for an adult child who's still financially dependent. Total everything up so you can see what you're truly spending across all 3 generations. Decide what's non-negotiable, the expenses that must stay, and then identify where you might be able to share responsibility, find outside resources, or set boundaries. Step 1, list every category of expense: your household bills, retirement contributions, and debt payments. Then add in your parents' medical costs, prescriptions, or long-term care needs. And don't forget about your children's expenses, whether that's tuition, after-school programs, or even support for an adult child who's still financially dependent. Step 2 is total everything up. This way you can see what you're truly spending across all 3 generations. Step 3, decide what's non-negotiable, the expenses that must stay, and then identify where you might be able to share responsibility, find outside resources, or set boundaries. Lisa told me that when she did this, she felt an enormous sense of relief. Nothing about her situation had changed in that moment. Her mom still needed care, her kids still had their expenses, but she finally knew exactly where her money was going. Instead of waking up in the morning worrying, she could look at her plan and know where she stood. Once you've built your multi generational budget and you can see the full picture, the next step is setting clear financial priorities and boundaries. Here's why this matters. Without priorities, every expense feels urgent. And without boundaries, you can end up giving so much to others that your own future gets sacrificed. That's how many Gen X families slip into financial stress. Not because they don't care, but because they care too much and try to cover everything. That's exactly what was happening to Lisa. She felt responsible for every need: her mom's prescriptions, her son's tuition, her daughter's school trips, and still trying to max out her retirement contributions. When we put all of it on paper, I asked her, "What's most important to you right now?" After thinking about it, she realized her top priorities were keeping her retirement savings intact so she didn't fall further behind, covering her mom's essential medical needs, helping her kids, but not in a way that left her financially vulnerable. That meant she had to draw some boundaries. She set aside a fixed amount each month for her children's expenses and communicated that to them. She also decided to keep her retirement contributions separate, almost untouchable, so she wasn't tempted to use that money for emergencies. Here's the key point: boundaries don't mean you're selfish, they mean you're realistic. By setting limits, you're protecting your ability to keep helping, not just today, but also years down the road. This is something every Gen Xer needs to do. One, separate your retirement funds from caregiving or emergency money. Think of them as two different buckets that should never be mixed. Two, communicate those limits to your family. Even if you earn a high income, your loved ones need to understand that you can't meet every need, and that's okay. Three, give yourself permission to say no when something falls outside your priorities. That's not failing your family, that's protecting your future so you can continue to be there for them. When Lisa finally had that conversation with her kids, explaining what she could help with and what she couldn't, she told me she felt lighter. She said, "I didn't realize how much guilt I was carrying, thinking I had to do it all. But once I set boundaries, everyone understood. And now I feel like I can breathe again." That's the power of priorities and boundaries. They don't make the challenges disappear, but they give you control over how you face them. Once you've built a multi generational budget and set your priorities, the next step is realizing this: you don't have to do it all yourself. There are community resources, programs, and assistance options out there designed to help families like yours. The challenge is that most people don't know about them, or they don't have time to look. But the truth is, every bit of help you uncover reduces the pressure on you and preserves your financial future. For Lisa, this was a game changer. She had been paying out of pocket for her mom's in home care, assuming that was the only option. But when we started researching, we found a local caregiving support program that helped cover part of the cost. That freed up several $100s a month in her budget. At the same time, Lisa's son applied for scholarships and grants that her family hadn't even considered before. They assumed college aid was only for families in financial crisis, but there were awards available for students in their situation too. By putting in the effort to research and apply, her son was able to reduce his tuition bill, and Lisa no longer felt like the entire burden was on her shoulders. Here are a few areas where you can look for help. For aging parents, look into Medicaid eligibility, state-funded caregiving programs, or nonprofit organizations that provide meal delivery, transportation, or medical support. Even small benefits can add up to big savings over time. For children, explore after-school programs, community childcare assistance, and especially scholarships and grants for higher education. There's more out there than many families realize. For your household, check for dependent care tax credits, local church or community support programs, or employer benefits that you might not be taking full advantage of. Yes, it takes time to track these things down, but think of it this way: every hour you spend researching could save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars each year. That's time well spent if it means you're not draining your own retirement savings or racking up debt to cover everything yourself. Lisa told me later, I wish I had known about these programs years ago. I thought I had to shoulder it all myself, but just knowing there was help available lifted such a weight off me. The bottom line is don't overlook community resources. They may not solve everything, but they can make the load lighter, and every little bit helps. The last piece of this puzzle is making sure all of the legal documents are in place. Now, I know that for many families, this is the part that gets pushed to the bottom of the list. It feels uncomfortable, it feels overwhelming, and it's easy to think, we'll deal with that later. But here's the reality. Without the right documents, you could face delays, court involvement, and unnecessary expenses at exactly the time when your family is already under stress. Lisa learned this the hard way. When her mom's dementia began to progress, the family realized they didn't have updated power of attorney or healthcare proxy documents in place. That meant every small medical decision suddenly required extra steps, phone calls, and paperwork. It slowed everything down and, in some cases, caused disagreements among siblings about what the right choice was. Eventually, Lisa and her siblings had to go through a legal process to get the authority they needed. It wasn't just expensive, it was emotionally draining. And Lisa told me later, I wish we had just taken care of this earlier. It would have saved us so much stress and heartache. That's why it's so important to take the time now to get these documents in order, not just for your parents, but for yourself too. Here are the essentials most families should review: a will or trust to make sure assets are distributed according to your parents' wishes, power of attorney to allow someone to handle financial matters if they can't, healthcare proxy or advance directive to ensure medical wishes are honored without confusion, and beneficiary designations on retirement accounts or life insurance so they pass directly without going through probate. When Lisa finally got all this squared away for her mom, she felt a huge sense of relief. And here's the bigger picture. Getting these documents in place isn't just about avoiding probate or legal fees. It's about protecting your family's peace of mind during one of the hardest seasons of life. Up until now, we've talked about the things you can do on your own. And truthfully, that's where most people start. That's exactly what Lisa did. She built her multi-generational budget, set priorities and boundaries, and even discovered some community resources to help lighten the load. She was making progress. But after a while, she hit a wall. She told me, I feel like I've done everything I can, but there are still too many moving pieces. I'm second guessing every decision. That's when she decided to bring in our financial advising service. Not because she couldn't figure things out, she's a smart, capable person, but because she needed someone in her corner, someone who could step back, look at the whole picture, and help her connect the dots. Here's what that looked like for her. She had holistic planning. Instead of looking at retirement savings in one conversation, college funding in another, and caregiving expenses somewhere else, we put it all on the same page. Lisa could now finally see how each piece affected the other, facilitating tough conversations. Lisa admitted it was difficult to talk to her siblings about money and caregiving for her mom. We helped her prepare for those conversations and even facilitated a family meeting, so Lisa didn't have to carry the burden of being the bad guy when limits had to be set, finding opportunities she didn't know about. From dependent tax care credits to long-term care insurance options, our team identified things Lisa had never thought to research. These didn't solve everything, but they reduced some of the emotional strain. Emotional support. And maybe the most important piece, Lisa had someone to talk to who wasn't emotionally tied to every decision. Someone who could say, you're doing the right things, here's what you don't need to worry about, and here's where we should focus next. That's the role a good financial advisor plays. Not to take over your life, not to sell you something, but to be an advocate for you while you're advocating for everyone else. Lisa's story isn't unique. In fact, it's the reality for so many Gen X families right now. Caring for parents, raising kids, supporting adult children, and still trying to prepare for their own retirement. It's a heavy load. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to stay overwhelming. Lisa didn't solve everything overnight, but step by step, by building her budget, setting boundaries, finding resources, updating legal documents, and finally leaning on a financial advisor, she went from feeling buried to feeling hopeful. She told me, for the first time in years, I feel like I'm not just surviving, I'm actually moving forward. And that's what I want for you too. If you're in this season of life, know this: you're not alone. There is a path forward, and you can build confidence in your financial future while still caring for the people you love most. And if you ever feel like you want someone in your corner, someone to help you organize, prioritize, and encourage you along the way, I'd love to walk with you in that process.